about 3.5 years or so, I dropped out. At that point, I started feeling like, oh, you're like, wow, I'm going to take on the world, nobody can stop me. Then you get to a point where you're like, what is this? I can't figure it out. Fun fact, I dropped out twice. If you can go to the school, please go to school. Don't ever drop out. Hi guys, so welcome back to my channel, and today I'm going to be sharing my story of how I became a software engineer. So if you do not know, I was initially studying Doctor of Pharmacy in KNUST. That's Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology for those who are not Ghanaians. I did that for about 3.5 years or so. I dropped out, which is not what I recommend, and while being dropped out, not having anything to do, I came across software engineering and I learned how to code. So today we are going to be talking about every single thing that I learned throughout my journey, sharing all the details with you. Hopefully you can learn a lot from my journey and from some of my mistakes as well. So like I said, I had just dropped out of school. This is somewhere 2020. That was my final dropout. Fun fact, I dropped out twice. That's not the important thing. Just to talk about that briefly, it's not something I would recommend anybody to do. Like, if you're in school, don't drop out of school for any reason. If you can go to the school, please go to school. Don't ever drop out. I would not recommend it. It adds a lot of challenges to your path that you don't need. Anything that you can accomplish without dropping out. So I am where I am today, not because I dropped out of school, but in spite of the fact that I dropped out of school. It's not anything to be proud of. So please don't think like, oh yeah, someone did it and then he was, he did well in his career, so I'm going to do it. Please do not do it. I will not recommend that at all. When I dropped out, I was kind of wondering what I'm going to do with my life, and I was just curious, reading stuff and on YouTube watching all kinds of videos and things, and I came across this video. The title of the video was The Age of AI. It is actually a series on YouTube which was made by the YouTube team. It talks about like artificial intelligence, potential benefits, and it really sparked my interest. I was like, wow, this AI stuff is really cool. You can do so many things. I saw applications in prosthetics, so I was quite excited about it, but then I still wasn't sure kind of like how I was going to get into it. Another thing that series taught me was that the people who were building all of these AI systems and stuff were not strange people. Like, they were human like I am. So I figured, well, if they can do it, then I could probably do it too. Now mind you, I was not sure how I was going to start. At least I know that, okay, I want to explore this coding thing. So what I did was I did what maybe people would do, which was to ask friends. So I have a friend who did cybersecurity. I asked him, I'm like, hey, I want to learn how to code. Where should I start? He's like, oh yeah, learn Python. And I'm like, Python? Is that like some kind of snake or something? Like, what do you mean learn Python? I'll just Google Python to see what's it about. I learned it's a programming language. I'm like, oh, programming language. Okay, like why do you need that? So that was the start. Just not knowing what Python was, I began to just Google around, watch YouTube videos. I'll just kind of search something like Python tutorial or something, just to whet my appetite a little bit. And I actually tried to learn on YouTube by watching YouTube tutorials, but to be frank with you, I gave up on learning how to do it because the YouTube tutorials were so complicated. I'm somebody who loves structure. I want to go from A to B to C. Sometimes the YouTubers don't give you enough detail as to how they arrive at a certain point. I was very concerned and I decided that, you know what, there must be a better way. So I actually paused. I thought it was too difficult, but it was actually just because of where I was learning from. So after stopping for a while, I was in a conversation with a friend and he's like, oh, there's this platform called Udemy. I didn't know what Udemy was, but Udemy is a platform for learning all kinds of things. So I went on Udemy, found some Python courses, and I started learning Python. Yes, I was at home, practice code every single day. That was my life. I wake up, I do it for as long as I can, then I go to sleep, wake up the following day, do it. I was like, I need to do this thing quickly. Another reason was I watched some YouTube videos, very misleading by the way. Don't watch such videos where they're like, oh, you can learn how to code and then after 3 months you land a job. Don't mind them, it's not true. It's going to be extremely difficult for you to pull that off. I was learning every day. I was building projects. That was like like a huge confidence boost, because at that point I started feeling like, oh, I'm onto something. I'm actually onto something. When you start coding and then they say print hello world and you print it and you see it in your terminal, you're like, Throughout my learning phase, I realized very quickly that I had to stay consistent. And for me, it was not very difficult to stay consistent, because if you're following the story, I've dropped out of school. Your family is looking at you like, the thing that we said you should go and do. You say you'll not do it. So let's see if the thing that you are doing now, it'll work. So there was a lot of motivation. I was just motivated in wanting to achieve something. The other thing that helped me was I enjoyed learning something new. It was challenging because you're learning something completely new. The learning phase of a software engineer is, you start it, you get so excited, you're like, wow, I'm going to take on the world, nobody can stop me. Then you get to a point where you're like, what is this? I can't figure it out. The instructor has done something, you are doing the same thing, it's not working, you are so upset with yourself. So at that point you're feeling like, can I really do this? For me, I didn't have a choice. I'm like, if I don't do this thing, what am I going to do? Am I going to go back to school? It just had to work. I did not have a choice. It had to work. I absolutely positively had to work. So it was not hard to be consistent because there was a lot of intrinsic motivation there. I was extremely motivated. So I would just wake up, regardless of how I'm feeling, I'll just wake up every day, open my laptop and continue the course. Like I said, I took a Python course. So if you don't know Python is a programming language. It's like the building blocks for any piece of software. That's what a programming language is. It helps you with like the building blocks for any piece of software. So you can imagine like if you are going to put up an actual physical building, you first need cement and all of those kind of building materials. So a programming language gives you all the building materials basically. Now, after taking the Python course, I was not done, because having all the building materials does not give you a building. You need to learn how to put up a building and what you actually want to build. What do you want to use the tools for? So at that point, I had a very important decision to make. There were two paths I could go. Either I go the route of data science and use Python for data science, or go the route of being a web developer. The decision was quite easy for me. I went for the web developer route. Why? Because at the time, there were more job opportunities for beginners in web development than there were for data scientists. It's much easier to break into web development as a beginner than it is to break into data science as a beginner. Data science requires more experience out of you. So in as much as I got into coding because I was excited about AI, I didn't just jump into AI because like, who is going to hire me? I need to get hired right now. So how did I know all this? I did research. I just went online, looked at job openings for data scientists versus front-end engineers, back-end engineers, full-stack engineers. All of these are web developers. And another thing is, when I was not done with Python, I went the web developer route, and then I felt like, I know how to use Python. What do I need to do next? I realized that for web development, you need to have front-end skills, back-end skills. So because I already knew Python, I went the route of going through like the back-end side of it. So I learned what you call Django, and then how to build like a website with Django, and then I learned some front-end parts of it, like HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. But the main focus of the course was on back-end development. I became quite conversant with the back-end side of it in Django, but then the front-end side of it was quite shallow because that was not the major focus of the course. So after learning that, I was like, okay, I want to test myself. At this time, maybe it's like 5 months into my journey. So the first course took me about 3 months. The second course, let's say a couple of months or so. 5 months into my journey, I'm like, I want to really test myself. Now, just a side note, as part of the first course, I built some projects and things, but all of them were like tic-tac-toe, blackjack, all these kind of games. It was all part of the course. It was nothing that somebody was going to use or anything like that, just terminal apps. And then the second course, then that was when I was like, I really want to test myself. So I decided that on my own, I'm going to build an e-commerce website where someone can upload their products, people can come, select product, add to cart, make a purchase, all of that. I wanted to build everything. And this is just 5 months. After 5 months, that was quite bold, but then at least it was going to be a very challenging project, but at least it was going to be a test for me to know how far I have come in my journey, right? So it was extremely important. So then when I started working on the project, I was able to build the back end part of it, like came to me almost naturally. But then the front end parts, I was sweating. I was like, hey, if you click a button, how is it going to show that the cat is in the cat? And how can the user click? It was extremely complicated. I was not seeing top at all. I didn't understand what was going on. So then I realized that, okay, there's a huge hole in my understanding. I know back-end stuff, but then the front-end part of it is lacking quite a bit. And of course, I could have decided to not care about the front end and then only focus on back end and become a back end developer and apply to jobs as a back end developer. But then again, I had to do research to find out between front end and back end developers, which one is more likely for a beginner to get access to. And it was clearly front end. Number two, between front end and back end, which one has more job opportunities? The answer again was front end. For example, you can have a team where for every back end developer, there are like 4 front end developers. There were more opportunities in front end than back end. So I needed to put myself in the best possible position to get a job. After I get a job, I can do front end, back end, side end. It doesn't matter. But like I needed to get a job first. So I didn't focus on back end. I just was like, okay, I need to learn front end, right? So at this point, I was kind of delving into full stack. If you don't know what it is, a full stack developer is somebody who knows both front end and back end. So that's kind of how it went. At that point, I was like, I really need to learn front end. And if you've been following, you know me, I like to know things in detail. So instead of just going on YouTube, going to learn some JavaScript or something, I was like, I need to dive deep. Like I really want to understand, because the project embarrassed me, made me feel like I don't know anything about it at all. So I took a JavaScript course, and that was actually one of my favorite courses ever for 2 reasons. Number one, because of the confidence boost. Learning it made me realize there were so many things I could do. And then number two, the instructor was just amazing. I'm going to leave a link in the description below. But that particular course was amazing. It's a very long course. I think it's about 60 hours or so of video. 60 hours of video. And obviously, you don't just watch video and then just watch it like you're watching a movie. You have to watch a bit, pause, code along. Don't watch and code. Just watch the video and then replicate what the instructor is doing. That course took me another 4 months or so, learning it every single day. I was just learning JavaScript. This is not like a framework. This is just JavaScript programming language. I learned that. So after that, I was conversant with 2 programming languages. I knew Python and I knew JavaScript. Was this the most efficient way to go? No. I could have learned JavaScript in the beginning and not needed Python, because JavaScript allows you to do both front end and back end. But I didn't know. So after learning all the JavaScript, building projects and things, I came to another point where I was like, I need to test myself again. At this point, I actually got my first client job. So somebody contracted me to, you have to celebrate with me. Somebody contracted me to build an e-commerce website, and I was able to deliver. I also built a POS system for like my dad's business, and I mean, it was working. They ended up not using it, but it was working. Whether or not they used it was not my business. I was able to do it. I was extremely confident. I was excited. Like I'm like, wow, I've been able to do this thing just from learning at home, and it was incredible. I wasn't done in terms of learning, because if you know anything about coding and you know anything about front end, you know that learning JavaScript is not enough. You need to have a front end framework. But then the more you learn about coding, as time goes on, it takes a much shorter time for you to pick up new skills. After the front end thing, I learned how to build back end projects with JavaScript. So I became like a full stack JavaScript developer, and then I also need Python. But then when I was taking the back end course, it was much shorter because I already had prior knowledge from learning Python back end and stuff like that. It was like quite seamless and things. The learning never stops. If you don't want to learn, don't get into software engineering. It will embarrass you, honestly. But after a certain point, I learned React, because if you know anything about front end, you need a front end framework. So I learned that, but that didn't take me quite long. That took me just a week or so to learn it. So yeah, that was my journey of not knowing how to code to learning how to code and actually having the skills to be able to land my first project for an e-commerce website, and then also build other projects and everything. So that's been it. Thank you so much for watching. So in the next video, I'm going to talk about how I actually landed my first job. Stay tuned for that. Stay subscribed. Turn on, what did they even say? Turn on the notification, and what else? Do all the things that you need to do to make sure that you don't miss that video. I'll see you.